Patterson
Howard.
My accent, man. It's always get in between. Well, Mayor, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. You always make yourself available every time we call. It might not happen right away, but as soon as your schedule permits, you take us in.
Absolutely.
A few months ago, I wanted to have an interview with you about how am I doing. You said, Ru, I just got elected a few months ago. Let's do a how am I doing later on. Well, today is the later on.
Sure.
Mayor, how are you doing? Tell us about the progress in Mount Vernon. Tell us about the things that you have not been able to do and why. Tell us about what you're looking for to do in the city of Mount Vernon.
Absolutely. So I've been in office now about 16 months, a little more than 16 months. In January 2020, I came in. And in March 10th, we started having our first cases of COVID, and life changed as we knew it. But while COVID has definitely been a challenge and has slowed down a lot that we've wanted to do here in Mount Vernon, we've been able to accomplish some good things. We have reformulated our IDA, our Industrial Development Agency. It's been out of compliance for a few years. And as of last week, we have collected over $2.4 million in delinquent pilot payments from some of our developers and our building owners. We renegotiated and worked with the County of Westchester to renegotiate the contract that we had with them for Memorial Field, and they increased the work that they were doing to up to about $28 million. We expect Memorial Field to be finished before the end of the year. A lot of people have said, well, it just looks like they're moving dirt from one place to another. Well, that's what they've been doing for many years. But as we move the dirt now, they're laying down new plumbing lines, they're laying down the electrical, the foundation, because you always have to build the foundation before you build on top of it. So that is the work that is going on, and Memorial Field will be an 8-lane stadium, 8-lane track. It'll have a football field that will also double as a soccer and a lacrosse field. We'll have 3 clay tennis courts. We're going to have field events like, you know, the long jump and what is that, the javelin, things of that nature. We'll have space for that. We will have a skate park within Memorial Field. We'll have about 3,800 seats. We will have locker rooms that are new and updated, a concession stand. So that's what's happening with Memorial Field. Memorial Field has been closed for over 10 years, and we've seen that ball kicked. And so by the end of this year, we are looking to break the ribbon. If you talk about a relay race, we're going to come across that ribbon and finish that project.
So if everything goes according to your projection, by the end of 2021, we should be able to see kids running around, athletes playing, people sitting down on the bench, so we should be able to see something.
Yes, our county executive expects to see significant progress by October of 2021. You know, I always add in a few extra months for delays, for weather, for whatever else is happening. So by the end of this year, by the end of 2020.
Now, Mayor, if we have to rewind the tape to pre-election,
yes,
when you were running your campaign, every mayor in every single town, nothing exclusively to Mount Vernon, every single municipality makes promises. You know, they have their priority sets on things that they want to work on once they elected. They have a list of priorities. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and 4, and so on. I'm sure you had yours.
absolutely.
Of your priorities, what have you done so far? And what is there that you wanted to work on, but you couldn't because of other components of the puzzle?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we wanted to work on is resetting the foundation of Mount Vernon government. Moving from politics to governance. And so we've been able to retain some of the talent that was here, as well as hire new talent to lead our departments. It's all about building a team, because this is not work that I do by myself. So, you know, we've been able to bring in a new police commissioner and deputy police commissioners and a new chief for the police department. We've been working on police reform here in Mount Vernon. This is something that we did before the governor's mandate. When we came in, we put together our discovery unit, which is something that was mandated through not police reform, but through criminal justice reform. And our discovery unit, I believe, is the top in the county insofar as clearing the information and sending it up to the DA's office. That was something that was not put together. It was supposed to start on January 1st. We came in, no work had been done on that, and so we were able to pull that together really quickly. We looked at the policies and procedures in the police department. Some of them had not been updated in 20 years, so our commissioner immediately began to change policies and procedures. We did training on de-escalation, training on mental health, how to engage the community. We did training on alternative uses of force because everything doesn't have to be a gun, and we want to make sure that we use the least force necessary when bringing situations into control. We closed our narcotics unit and we retrained and opened up a violent crimes unit, which has collected more guns than any other community in Westchester and gotten guns off the street in a time where a lot of police are not doing that because they don't necessarily want to have interaction with the community in that way for fear of escalation. So we've been able to get guns off the street. We had started again before police reform on pulling together and developing a civilian complaint police board, review board. We've put together through our Deputy Commissioner Lackard a community health, mental health network and a community health network. And so we pulled providers together because we understood that there needs to be a hybrid of response in the community to different incidences. Everything is not just a police response, but oftentimes you need your mental health partners, you need your substance abuse partners, your homeless partners, and your domestic violence partners in going out and dealing with issues in the community. We've developed programs to work with some of our youth, and instead of, just arrest them, work with them on diversionary programs. We have retooled our auxiliary police department, retrained them, put them back out into the community, and they have expanded responsibilities where they're really interacting with the community. And one other thing we've done for the first time since 2016, tomorrow, we will be giving a police test. There has not been a police test in Mount Vernon for the past 5 years, and that's caused a lot of difficulty because when you're not able to give police tests in a community, then once you run out of your residence list, you're hiring from outside of your community. And so that list of residents ran out a few years ago, and so we've been hiring from outside of our community. The Mount Vernon list ran out altogether. We had to go up to Westchester County and depend on their list. And in depending on their list, clearly, these are not residents from Mount Vernon. They're not officers who are of color and who have necessarily experience in urban communities. And so we're glad COVID delayed it for about a year because they gave no civil service exams. But tomorrow we will be giving a test to approximately over 500 individuals. We have some Mount Vernon residents on there, and hopefully by December, we'll be ready to hire a class of Mount Vernon residents.
That is great, Mayor. But before we go too far ahead, I want to touch on something that you just made the point of earlier. Gun recoveries.
Yes.
Those guns are potential firearms that can kill people.
Yes.
Once they are recovered, that one will not kill anyone.
Right.
Now, Mount Vernon has the smallest amount of population, in comparison to Yonkers.
Yes.
But the guns, when you say we have recovered the greatest amount, are we talking about in percentage or actually numbers of guns?
Numbers of guns.
So you have recovered more guns in Mount Vernon than you have in Yonkers that has 200,000 residents.
That we're aware of, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of communities, whether it's Yonkers, New Rochelle, New York City, where because of policing concerns and George Floyd and other cases, that you do not have police departments who are willing, police officers who are willing to engage in vehicle stops and things of that nature, to engage people who are on the corner and might be doing wrong because they're afraid that those situations might escalate. But we have a specialized training, we have a specialized unit within our detective division that engages the community and is not aggressive, but assertive in working to get guns off the street. When we do car stops, we have found guns. When we have dealt with loitering, we have found guns. When we've dealt with stopping dice games, we've found guns. And the people in the community know. One of the unintended consequences of the criminal justice reform, which I've been very supportive of for many years, is as of January 1st, I mean, we had a perfect storm coming in. As of January 1st, bail reform kicked in. And about 85% of the things that people would be held on bail for, now they're released. They get a desk appearance ticket. And so people began to know if you're arrested for something, you can be arrested and you can be out by lunch. If you're arrested in the evening, you're going to be out in the morning or within a few minutes because they couldn't hold you. The second thing that we saw that happened is with COVID coming and with George Floyd being killed, I think there's been more demonstrations and people paying attention to police-community interaction than ever before. And there have been many, many calls for police not to police in certain ways, and all is part of reform, but at the same time, then, you know, your criminals know that the police are holding back on doing their job and they take liberties. So if police are not able to police communities, and if people can get arrested and get out in an hour or hour and a half after being processed, taking a picture and having their fingerprints done and released without bail, you're just recycling bad actors back into the community. And then when COVID came, the courts were closed for many months. But our police department understands that gun violence is an issue in our community. And so they have been very intentional in working on getting the guns off the street. And we're working with our federal partner, ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, to do the same.
Now, Mayor, you know that we are live streaming this interview, so questions might come off sync.
No problem.
You know, we might be talking about something, they might be asking about something else.
Okay.
So we have here, I really don't know if it's a question or just a statement. This is from Samuel Rivers. Greetings, madam. You just recently signed legislation to house Youth Bureau office at 11 West Prospect Avenue. The same office building as your close friend, Kenneth Plummer. Now this is his statement. Did you go out for RFP? Why or why not?
So I hire directors. Ms. Debbie Butler is the director of the Youth Bureau. And she has a grant and she needed office space. She went out into the community, she and her team, they looked at least 9 different locations to find an appropriate location that was handicap accessible, that had proper COVID regulations, that had good affordable rent and had the specifications that they needed. And based on her recommendation, not only at 11 West Prospect, but also at Friendship Baptist Church, she located space. And upon the recommendation of my director and her staff, I signed off on a referral letter to the council. The council had questions around conflict because Mr. Plummer, who is a friend of mine and worked with me on my campaign, manages that building. And so they wanted to make sure that the Youth Bureau did their due diligence in ensuring that they looked at multiple spaces. They went out and looked at even more spaces. They came back and they answered the questions that satisfied the city council, and they signed off on the legislation, and the Board of Estimates signed it and passed it. So there's no conflict of interest. I've been in Mount Vernon all my life, and there's not many people who I'm not going to know at different varying levels. So, you know, no harm, no foul. There's always people who are looking for some salacious gossip, and Mr. Samuel Rivers is one of them. I mean, in the beginning of my campaign, he told everyone that I was going to jail for violating the Hatch Act. And on April 1st, 2019, the federal government sent him a letter saying that I hadn't violated the Hatch Act. So I know Mr. Rivers is not a supporter of mine, and I would never look for him to be a supporter of mine, and I'm not necessarily concerned about it. And so he can bring up impropriety, but we have dotted our I's and crossed our T's, there's no conflict of interest, and we're moving forward so that we can provide the proper services to our young people in a professional space that is going to be comfortable for them and meet the needs of our staff.
Going back to the police department and
Yes.
guns.
Mhm.
I'm glad that those guns were recovered. They will not be able to commit another crime with those guns. But if those guns were not recovered and used to commit a homicide, a murder, or whatever, many of those crimes in Mount Vernon, many, are not finding a resolution. The investigation stays there. Mount Vernon has a large number of unsolved murders.
So Mount Vernon has a large number of unsolved murders prior to 2020.
Definitely.
Any murders that were done in 2020, we've closed over 84% of those cases. And so I'm proud of the fact that we've been able to close one of the highest percentages of homicides in the country. Okay, so I can't speak to some of the things that happened in 2019 and before, but things that have happened, murders that have happened under my administration, we've closed over 80% of those homicides. First of all, that's not just something that I'm proud of, because I would prefer that the homicides never happened in the first place. But we're not in people's apartments, and we can't be on every corner and in every place. But our detective division definitely did good investigations, and things came together. We worked with our federal partners like the ATF, and we were able to close those cases. There are 2 or 3 that are still unsolved, but some of that has to do with the community not cooperating. For the most part, people know who are involved in these murders, and for reasons of their very own, don't always come forward. We have Omarion, who was killed on 8th Avenue. I believe there are people who know who killed them. We have another gentleman who was killed on Fulton Avenue. I know that people, they were there outside of the store. They know who killed them. And so it's not only up to the police department to do the investigations, it is up to the people to come forward. If you say these are your friends, if you say these are people who you care about, then you have a responsibility to come forward and help these cases be closed. Period. The police can't do everything. The community must, they absolutely must cooperate in these investigations if we're to close them.
But Mayor, let me play devil's advocate for the sake of arguments. Yes, things happened before you became mayor. But because of that, that does not mean that that's not longer your problem.
No, I'm not saying that that's,
I know.
hold on. I'm not saying that's not my problem, but I am saying what we've done is we've turned the day insofar as, because we have our violent crimes unit, we have, we've reinstituted the homicide division. The homicide division in Mount Vernon had been closed. And we've also opened up a cold case squad. So we do have a cold case squad, and we've been able to go back and solve several of the murders that were open, and we have some hopefully that we are coming to a conclusion on. But again, once again, things that happened before 2020, if you didn't have people investigating them, if you didn't have the proper people on the scene taking information and pursuing those leads, that's why they're cold case, because after a while that trail goes cold. And so when we do have homicides now, we make sure that we have our homicide unit, our detective unit, our VCU unit, our intelligence units working together along with one of our biggest federal partners, the ATF, in making sure that we're investigating these, that we're going out into the neighborhoods, that we're speaking to the people, the families, we're collecting evidence. And so we have had good success in closing cases that happened under my watch. Oh, this way, under my watch. But that is not to say that we don't care about what happened before I came in. But if all of the materials were not brought together and some of that work wasn't done, it becomes harder. So we have reopened the cold case unit of the Mount Vernon Police Department, as well as the homicide unit, and we are working diligently on cases. And we can't tell you where the investigations are right now, because that wouldn't be proper.
And
but I can tell you that we have dedicated the resources for the first time that have not been dedicated for years in the city of Mount Vernon. As I stated before, the homicide unit was closed, and there was no cold case unit. We have a homicide unit and we have a cold case unit.
Now, Mayor, my point was exactly what you just mentioned. And this is a common denominator that we have in Mount Vernon, in Yonkers, and I would bet any other municipality.
Absolutely.
Crimes happen, but the police alone cannot resolve those crimes unless the community, those that are complaining about cold cases, those that are complaining that cases are not being resolved, those that know about those crimes don't step forward and say something about those crimes. But at the same time, we have to understand why they don't step forward. Because those individuals have to go back to the community where those crimes happen. And they have to live among those people who they just told about. How do you
that is why,
reconcile both things?
That's why there's called confidentiality.
You really
And
believe
so
in that, sir?
when you give information, it can be confidential information. And I cannot always speak again to past practices, but we take these homicides very seriously. We take it very serious in protecting the identity of people who come forth with information on homicides, to make sure that their information is not carelessly put out there on the street. And so we are doing our job, but we also need the community to step up and do their job in giving that information.
Now let's go to something else.
Sure.
We've been here about the comptroller, the mayor not being able to work together. Just before I arrived at your office, I stopped by the comptroller's office. I said, are you going to sit with us and give us your side of the version? She said, maybe. But I said, listen, I am on my way upstairs to do an interview with the mayor. Do you have anything to say? And this is what she tells me. While the mayor was spending money like the house was on fire, I was trying to save Mount Vernon from a bankruptcy.
So Comptroller Reynolds has failed to collect $482,000 in taxes from the school district. From Vernon Woods, she has returned a $227,000 tax check. We get at least 10 people a week who come into our office and say they've been trying to pay their taxes downstairs and the comptroller refuses to accept their taxes. We get others who send in emails that say they've sent their checks in months ago and the comptroller has failed to deposit them and send them their receipts. We weren't spending money like we were on fire at all. We had overtime in the police and the fire department higher last year, as well as in DPW, higher than before. Some of our overtime in the fire department had to do with the fact that in 2019, the comptroller failed to allow the fire department to hire 11 recruits for openings because her daughter's baby's father, who does not live in Mount Vernon, was not accepted into the fire academy because we have a Mount Vernon preference. And so she said she was doing an audit and she stopped people from being hired. That caused us to go into 2020 with almost 18 spaces empty. In order to maintain proper staffing levels, overtime was required. In March, the first 4 cases of COVID that we experienced here in the city of Mount Vernon were firemen. And not only did that now pull them out, but it also pulled out people who had been in contact with them. We had over 25–30% of our fire department at one time in March and April and May that were out due to COVID or coming in contact with someone with COVID. And so the fire department experienced very high overtime last year, as did the police department. Again, we had COVID, we had lots of infections, we had people who were in the hospital, some people who were on ventilators, and we had entire departments like the communications department that were out at one time, and many other people who were out because of exposure. We had 20 openings throughout the year in DPW because the comptroller failed to allow us to hire. And so instead of paying people straight wages, we had to pay people time and a half. The DPW department, they collected more garbage than in the history of Mount Vernon. Why? Because schools were closed, companies were closed, people were at home, working from home, going to school from home, and so they had to collect garbage round the clock. And again, that required overtime, as well as our sewers, which she has not paid some of the bills going back to 2018. The sewers have backed up, especially with the increase of people being home. And we had people who had to watch sewer areas. We have certain parts of our city that are running on life support. We have bypass machines that are allowing full neighborhoods their toilets to flush and for their sewage to work. And so we have overtime, we have staff who are there for overtime. These are real realities, but these things did not pop up. These things came up as a part of her failure to allow for people to be hired. And so if you don't hire and pay straight time and you're paying time and a half, that is inefficient, it's a waste of money, and that's what happens. So if you're not collecting taxes, another thing that the Comptroller says over and over again is that the people in Mount Vernon are not paying their taxes. There are so many people who have come to our office and the law department saying that they haven't received a tax bill in 2 years, 3 years through the Comptroller's office. And so that's some of the reason they're not collecting taxes. Another thing she says is, oh, because of COVID, people can't afford to pay taxes. But the school district, the city usually collected the school district's taxes, but the school district in July of 2020 took over the collection of their own taxes. The school district's taxes are twice as high as the city of Mount Vernon, yet 98% of Mount Vernon residents and businesses paid their school taxes. And so I would submit to you that if 98% of people are paying their taxes to the school district, you know, what percentage of taxes is she collecting in her office? Why hasn't she been transparent about what she's collecting? Why hasn't she been transparent about the amount of money that she's spending on her own personal lawyers for avoidable lawsuits when failing to pay for the lawyers that have been hired by the city to deal with labor issues and other lawsuits, again, that are even previous to us coming, and some that have been filed because she hasn't done her work. So, you know, the Comptroller can say a lot, but we've already seen, as proven by a federal judge who ordered her to pay bills, who ordered her to pay overtime, that the Comptroller's not doing her job. We've seen by orders from a county judge that the Comptroller has failed to do her job. So, you know, my question is, why did she choose not to run? Because she knows that she hasn't been doing her job. I think that she knows that she's over her head. She finds constant opportunities to try and deflect while she's not doing what she's doing, but we're working. I can give you documentation after documentation of what she hasn't done. She can't give you any documentation showing that we've overspent. We actually, based on the information that she gave us, did an analysis of our spending last year, and outside of overtime for police, fire, and DPW, we didn't even spend about 80% of the allocation that we had available to us.
No, I speak with her and she tells me that you are incompetent. That, you know, you are a politician.
Okay.
And this is about politics, not about the people of Mount Vernon.
No problem.
I talk to you, you give me an indication that it's incompetency of her part, because she's not doing what she's supposed to be.
So rude.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Let's stop there, because
Yes.
what I'm not going to do is bicker back and forth around politics. I am a person who has run a corporation for the past 15 years.
And I know you for all those
I have
years.
years of completed audits and financials and a proven track record of turning around organizations and agencies and delivering the work that I'm supposed to deliver. Deborah Reynolds can't say the same. Since becoming Comptroller here in the city of Mount Vernon in 2018, she's worked with 3 mayors. And with the 3 mayors that she's worked with, everyone has had the same argument, is that she's not paying bills. We could look at monies that we have in the state that she has not drawn down. The facts speak for themselves. And so I'm not going, you know, there's so much more that we could speak about that is of more importance. I have my education, I have my experience, I have my degrees, and if she could show you half of what I could demonstrate right now, then, you know,
Well,
that's a conversation to have. But when you have your interview with her, if she ever grants it to you, you could speak to her and she can present you with anything else. But I think there's so much more going on in Mount Vernon
And we're
than
going to
the
address
Comptroller,
But-
then I'm going to
But
deal
Mayor,
with those things.
it's an important thing because the people of Mount Vernon want
We are
to.
suffering. The people, well, the people
Exactly.
of Mount Vernon have already heard. The people of Mount Vernon are very, very aware of what the problem is. The people of Mount Vernon are aware that the deficiency lies in Deborah Reynolds. Okay, I cannot deliver. I don't write checks.
I hear
I
you.
don't pay bills. She does. Our streets, we have about $6 million dedicated to our streets. Over $3.5 million of those to repaving the streets are coming from New York State government that we cannot draw down because she hasn't paid the bills. She held up millions, over $10 million of HUD funding coming into the city. And so we had to create a workaround and bring this money into the clerk's office. And now we're able to move programs forward. So I'm ready for the next topic.
Just to close this argument, I
It's
want.
not an argument, it's
No,
just
this
facts.
segment, I'm sorry, okay, to close this segment, I want to
Yes.
make it clear that we have invited the Comptroller to sit on their chair and to give us and the people of Mount Vernon her version according to her, or the truth according to her. So, Miss Deborah, anytime you're ready, you have our number, call up, reach out, and let's make it happen. Now let's move about other things happening.
Yes. Okay.
You have your list. Let's talk about what's coming, what you have accomplished, that it's a done deal, and what's next.
So some of the other things that we have done here in Mount Vernon, because I just took a few notes for ourselves. Our bridges, we have a 1.1 mile railroad cut in Mount Vernon, 11 bridges. 7 of those bridges have been closed down for 3, 5, 10 years or more. We have seen the 6th Avenue Bridge reopen, which is right out here, the 10th Avenue Bridge and the 3rd Avenue Bridge. We've accelerated the timeline for them reopening, and they will be reopening in June. We will then move over to our Fulton Avenue Bridge and our South Street Bridge to have them reopen. Why is that very important? Because when you have bridges closed, it is very difficult for our seniors to get across the bridge to the other side of town to go to the supermarket. It is difficult for ambulances, police cars, fire trucks to be able to get to the scene of a fire, a crime, or someone having a medical emergency. And so our community is split by a railroad cut, and our response time for our emergency services has been devastated. You know, they're doing the best that they can. We haven't necessarily lost lives, but it does put the public health and the public safety of the community at risk, and it's an inconvenience. So reopening of these bridges has been a priority for us, and we are moving forward. We have spoken to Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. We have spoken to several of his regional directors, and they are absolutely looking to work with us and the MTA to expedite it, because this is a public health, safety, and a quality of life issue for the city of Mount Vernon.
We really want to be proactive. We don't want to lose a life in order to fix things from not losing a life.
Right. And so that is why we've accelerated the process, and we've worked very closely with the MTA, and now we're working also with the Federal Department of Transportation and their regional directors to continue to allocate resources and make sure that we're speeding up that timeline and we're not delaying it, because we do want to be proactive. We found workarounds.
You want to show me something, Mayor? You want to show me something?
No, I'm just thinking the quality of life task force is something else that we've done.
Now, what about the allegations?
Allegations,
because this is nothing but allegations of what the people are saying in regards to transfer of funds to the water department. Is there any truth to this?
They're not allegations. So we have monies coming in from the American Rescue Plan. We're scheduled to receive $42.6 million in 2 payments of $21.3 million. The first set of payments we're eligible to draw down in May of this year, and the next set of payments will be eligible in May of 2022. And so they're not allegations, because what we've done has been very clear and transparent. The Comptroller should be the superintendent of accounts. but we've seen based on the New York State Auditor's report that she hasn't necessarily been doing her job. We know by facts that she has not paid her bills, and I'm not sure if this is Mr. Rivers again. If he'd like to interview me, tell Sam Rivers he can come on and interview me. But
this is an open forum.
It's an open forum, but no problem. I'm not sure if you're interviewing or he's interviewing, but it's fine. But what we did with the American Rescue Plan monies, knowing that our comptroller has not paid bills, I received a notice yesterday that we owe the state over $12 million in our medical insurance payments for our staff here in the city of Mount Vernon. So we are not about to entrust an additional $42.6 million to the comptroller. So what we did is, as we did with the HUD monies, we created legislation and a process by which these federal funds will come into the city clerk's office. Then those monies will be transferred over to the water department. The water department in the past, because they are an independent agency outside of the city's financial management, there have been questions and issues of financial mismanagement by previous administrations in the water department. Understanding that and understanding that this is not traditionally water department money, we have ensured that this money will be supervised by the city council and the mayor's office. So the same way that monies are expended in the rest of the city and that the process is usually done with the comptroller, we've done that. So before monies are expended, it will go for approval through the city council, and once the city council passes the authorization of the use of those funds, then those fund requests will come to the Board of Estimate, which is the comptroller, the city council president, and myself as the mayor, and it will go through that same process. So we have put checks and balances into place. We can talk about this is against the charter, but everything that she has done up until now is against the charter. And so again, we are not going to entrust money to a person who has shown clearly that they are not able to manage the city's finances, and I would do it again.
No, Mayor.
So is there anything else? Because
No, there is more. There is more. Now, Mayor, one of the ways for the city to succeed is by bringing new investors into the city, so they can create, build up new business buildings, whatever. What is the city of Mount Vernon? Is there any incentive out there for new investors to come to Mount Vernon and invest in the city?
Well, first of all, one of the best incentives is Mount Vernon's location. Our location, we are next to the city. Our transportation that we have available, insofar as people being able to get to any place in the region, really within 30 minutes, is a big incentive. So we look at projects that want to come to Mount Vernon, whether they're businesses or their residential developments. We look at them on a case-by-case basis to see what it is that they are offering to the city of Mount Vernon and what they're looking to get. So we don't have just a blanket incentive where we're saying we're going to give you a 25% discount on your taxes. We have to look at the merits of the project. We have to look at the financial situation of the project, and on a case-by-case basis, working with the IDA, that is what we do to develop incentives. We are working with our small businesses. We are speaking to other businesses that are interested in coming into Mount Vernon and ensuring that they have a seamless process. We are in the process of hiring a building commissioner. We need a building commissioner. We need to reinvest in our building department, as Mount Vernon has not grown its economy over the years. We've just continued to take away services and critical staffing, and so the building department, for one, has been understaffed for years, making it very difficult for people who are coming in to do business or developments to get their projects through the building department with efficiency. And so we are ramping up staffing in the building department. We're doing the same in our planning department. We are in the process of recruiting a planning commissioner, not just someone who understands the history of planning, but someone who understands how to move our community forward. the old things just aren't always going to work. So we need someone who understands equity. We need someone who understands smart and responsible development. And most of all, as Mount Vernonites, we also understand the value of our community. And we will not continue to just arbitrarily discount Mount Vernon and give away incentives for projects that can do better.
Now, Mayor, what about for those businesses that are already in Mount Vernon, mostly small businesses? They are going through a difficult financial time. What is the city doing to retain them?
Absolutely. We've been working with SUNY, we have been working with SCORE, we've been working with the Small Business Development Agency through our IDA. Robin Mack is our Director of Business Development, and we've been working with our small businesses to help them to secure loans and financing that have become available, especially because of COVID. We're also working to upskill some of our business owners. Like you said, these are small business owners. They know how to order and open up their business, but business is changing, especially in the time of COVID. People are doing more online purchasing. We're working with them to understand finances better so that they can gain better access to capital. And that's what we're doing. Those are some of the things that we're doing with our small businesses. And I think it's been working because Mount Vernon is outpacing the region in our sales tax revenues as based on our projections. And so we saw in the first quarter of this year a 10.8% increase over last year in sales tax revenue. And that is one of the biggest jumps that we've seen in the region. So we're very proud of how we're working with our small businesses. Our small businesses need technical assistance so that they can be more competitive, so that their financial condition can be improved and their understanding of finances, so that we can work with them to gain access to the capital that they need as small businesses, not only to survive COVID, but to grow and expand to the next level of operations and be more competitive.
Now, Mayor, if we fast forward the time,
Yes.
I know that none of us have a crystal ball that we're able to look at it, but let's say we did. And I'm looking at that crystal ball and I see the mayor there, and this is your second term.
Okay.
On my crystal ball. And we look back, what would be the things that you would like to be remembered as doing for Mount Vernon? What is your most important thing for the city of Mount Vernon?
So there are several things that I think are critical for Mount Vernon to move forward. We must stabilize our infrastructure here in Mount Vernon. For 15 years, the federal and state government have been speaking to our city leaders about our crumbling sewer system and our wastewater management. And so we are working with our federal representatives from Bowman's office to Gillibrand and to Schumer's office to gain access to some of the federal funds that we believe are coming down for infrastructure. We are working with the New York State Division of Environmental Control and the governor's office, as well as our state legislators, to help us to secure monies to fix our sewer system. Our sewer system is 100 years old. It's over 100 miles long, and it's going to cost over $100 million, not just to repair, but it needs to be replaced. So we need to do that. We also need to, once we do that, of course, we're going to have to repave our streets. Like I said, our bridges, we need to take care of that. We need to upgrade our city buildings and make sure that our fire station, our Dole Center, our armory, our police department, and even here, City Hall, the city-owned properties that we have are in proper functioning order so that we can properly serve the community. So those are some of the infrastructure things. And clearly, you know, broadband, we have to make sure that our city is wired, because as we saw last year, there's more reliance right now on use of the internet. And we want to ensure that our residents, especially our most vulnerable residents, have affordable, consistent, and high-quality access to the internet. This is important because so many of our children are still learning from home. We don't know how long that will continue, but even if they go back to school full time, we want to make sure that for research projects, for homework, and just for their own additional growth, that they have stable access to the internet, that our seniors have it, our businesses are going to need it. The other thing that we need to take care of here in Mount Vernon is our digital infrastructure in the city of Mount Vernon.
But Mayor, just before we get there, let me ask, a few days ago you were at the YMCA, your old place in Yonkers, in a press conference with the Congressman Bowman.
Yes.
We spoke about what you just said about the infrastructure funds that might be coming. When should we be seeing that? If that happens, if it's granted, when should we be seeing that? And when should the work start in Mount Vernon?
Well, the work in Mount Vernon has already started. We have done more since, I would say, September of 2020, when I elevated Commissioner Bush to the Commissioner of DPW. Then we've seen work done on the sewers in Mount Vernon in the past 10 years. We've had a lawsuit from the Department of Justice through the Environmental Protection Agency on the federal side and the DEC on the state side, and work had not been done. And the, I believe, 7 or 8 critical issues that they had that we were out of compliance with have all been addressed. Since September of this year. Some things happened before the winter, other things have happened afterwards. Next week is DPW week. We will continue to do work. We have allocated through CDBG monies, and we're looking to allocate more money through our American Rescue Plan, but even through our Community Development Block Grant monies, we are allocating several $1 million of money to continue this work. In 2016, when I was the Commissioner of Planning, we were able to secure a $1.6 million grant, I believe, to work on the sewers and deal with wastewater. And the city had not been spending that money. And so since my administration has come in, we've executed that grant and we are starting to spend down that money. There were some delays, absolutely, in us being able to move some of our projects forward because clearly the Comptroller was not paying our vendors. But we have worked with the county and we've worked with state agencies to even circumvent some of that. We had to take her to federal court and the federal judge ordered her to pay the bills. So we've been able to put GPS on our different sanitation trucks. We've been able to purchase a camera system where we are taking pictures and documenting our entire sewer system throughout the city. And I believe we have about 25% of the city done where we have a clear understanding of where our breaks are. We've applied for a grant from New York State to hire an engineer to lead the whole process of evaluating our entire sewer system, developing a full plan of action and costing that out. So as we apply for federal funds and as we receive federal funds, that we will have a clear plan on how to address a 100-year-old sewer system that has been crumbling for many years. And so, the deferred maintenance of so much of Mount Vernon's infrastructure has landed on our door. And we're not going to be able to deal with everything overnight, but we are dealing with the most critical issues first so that we can stabilize our sewer system. And then we'll be moving forward in a very strategic and intentional way to make sure that we're repairing and replacing the most affected parts of our sewer system and our wastewater system.
Now, Mayor, COVID has taught us a very important lesson. That, as you just said, readdressing it. Internet, certain levels of infrastructure. How important it is to have a stable internet that will allow government to communicate in crisis like that.
That's
what we are just doing.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's what I just spoke about. So what I was getting ready to transition to, I spoke about the internet in the community and how important it is for especially our most vulnerable residents to have stable access for education, our businesses to have access, because we see so much businesses being done online. We want to make sure that our businesses have the infrastructure to support their online sales as well. But when it comes to the city of Mount Vernon and the digital infrastructure of the city of Mount Vernon, when I got here, we are operating on 25-year-old computer servers. No one has a computer in their house that is 25 years old. I mean, it just makes me think of like the Commodore 64 or something, and that's something that we were using. And so the servers that we're operating on in the city of Mount Vernon, where our financial infrastructure and our data and our operations, operate off, 25 years old. Unfortunately, this has not been an investment for Mount Vernon for years. Again, another can that's been kicked down the road. And when you have mayors that are not necessarily understanding of technology, they didn't invest in it. And so we're investing in that now. We have I think for the first time, we have a management services commissioner who is an information management specialist. We've oftentimes had people who were financial managers in that space, but we have evaluated our system. We did recently have 10 servers delivered, not because the controllers paid the bill, but because our commissioner of management services was able to negotiate with Dell, even though we owed them tens of thousands of dollars, to deliver us almost $250,000 of equipment that we have budgeted, so that we can replace the servers in the police department, replace the servers in the water department, replace the servers here in City Hall. Online business and access to government is important. Being able to be an open and transparent government requires us to have a stable digital infrastructure so that we can put meeting notices up, so that we can put documents up. And then definitely when you're looking at COVID, if people need to send in plans for the building department or the planning department, if people want to pay bills like water or their taxes online, we need to make sure that they have stable access to the internet. We also, for the first time in many years, I know we put a new face on the website last year, but we did not change the back working of the website. We are doing a ground up rebuild of our website here in the city of Mount Vernon that will be hosted on our new servers. We've also gone out, and in another month, we will be doing a full launch of Mount Vernon Connect, which is an app that people will be able to download on the App Store, whether it's the Apple app or Google. They'll be able to download it to their phones. They'll be able to communicate with all of the departments in our city. They'll be able to send in concerns, complaints, appreciation, ask questions through that app. And we'll also, when people register for that app, as the city, we'll be able to push out information to our residents. We know not everyone is sitting at the desk looking at their laptop, and not everyone is on Facebook or other forms of social media. And so, but most people have a smartphone. And even a lot of our seniors, my mother is 75 and she has a smartphone. My aunt is 93 and she has a smartphone. And so we want to find one of the easiest ways and most financially responsible and efficient ways to communicate with our residents. And we believe Mount Vernon Connect is going to be one of those answers. And so we're very proud of that, because connectivity and communication is key to letting people know what services are available, to being able to hear their concerns, because we want to make sure that we're in an accessible government so that we can be responsive to the needs of our residents. And so this is something that is a major priority for us. And we want to also make sure that we're able to protect our government as well as our residents' information. You know, hacking of government computers is something that is happening all over the country and all over the world. And with these new servers and making sure that we have the proper security protocols and encryption, we'll be able to make sure that we're able to safeguard city information as well as our residents' information who are doing business with the city.
No doubt, Mayor. It was like a week ago or two that we had a hacking of a few. Absolutely. And that actually created lots of problems, you know, for the country. Now, Mount Vernon, as you said, your government, City Hall, at the end of the day, it's all about the people of Mount Vernon. Absolutely. At the end of the day, we want to make your city better. The fuel crisis in Mount Vernon, if it exists,
it exists.
It exists. that can put in danger the lives of many residents of your city.
Everything that you're asking me continues to go back to the Comptroller. So again, I would say to you, if you want to get answers regarding why she's not doing her job, to go back. But we have been in court. We have had court orders for her to pay the bills. The courts are tired of trying to legislate the day-to-day business of Mount Vernon. Several months ago, when this fuel crisis started, we reached out to Westchester County Executive George Latimer and his team, as well as the Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins, and we were able to set up an opportunity in the really emergency piece of the crisis for our cars to be able to go up there and fill up gas. I had to write a small check to a local gas station so that our police cars...
The BP gas station?
Yeah, the BP gas station. I wrote a check from my inaugural campaign funds, which is totally legal to do. It's not necessarily advised, but leaders have to step up and do unconventional things in unconventional times. And like you said, it's about the people of Mount Vernon. And so if people want to question that, that's okay, but I'm going to make sure that our police and our fire and our DPW and our building department have the fuel that they need to be able to deliver the services that they need for the city. I did sign just 2 days ago checks for our regular gas and our diesel companies, and hopefully the Comptroller is either mailing them out or allowing them to come pick them up. We will keep the pressure on her, but since I am not the CFO and I'm only the CEO and I don't have the ability to write checks, we continue to submit our bills to her and we follow the process and we apply the pressure where it's necessary. But unfortunately, we do not have a strong and competent partner in the finance department, and that is definitely a challenge. You say it's about the people, so the other parts of the infrastructure that we want to be able to fix in the city of Mount Vernon is paving the roads. I drive on the same roads that our residents drive on. I'm concerned about my alignment. I'm concerned about my axles. I'm concerned about my rims. I'm concerned about my back hurting by hitting certain potholes. So it's not like I live in a separate Mount Vernon than the rest of the residents. We want to see our garbage picked up. But it's hard for your garbage to be picked up when you don't have proper staffing, when you don't have proper equipment. We want to make sure that our streets are plowed, but it's same thing if you don't have equipment. We want to make sure that the streets are cleaned. We have 5 sweepers and 3 of them are down because the Comptroller has not paid the bills. We need police cars right now. And again, we've worked with the county, our police commissioner, Glenn Scott, and our chief Oliviers connected with the Westchester County Police Department. They were able to secure 4 vehicles for a $1 lease. And then once they were able to make that agreement with their police commissioner for the county, I called and spoke to our county executive and our deputy county executive, and then myself and our county legislator, Tyree Woodson Samuels, worked together to make sure that the Board of Legislature supported the arrangement made by our police department with the county police department to get us some emergency cars. But we are a sovereign government and we should not have to operate that way. But right now, that is the reality of Mount Vernon. If you don't have access to the money, if you don't have the person who is supposed to write the checks doing that, then you have to find creative ways to continue to operate government, and that is what we're doing. And that is why this Comptroller's race is so critical, because we want to make sure that we have the right people in place to do the work, and I believe in January of 2022, we will have a better partner in the Comptroller's office who has the executive leadership skills and the competencies and will work with their staff to bring back normal fiscal operations in the city of Mount Vernon. But it will take a while to recover from 4 years of work that has not been done properly. We're going to have to untangle a lot of spaghetti and figure out what we have not had an opportunity to see into the finances of the city of Mount Vernon for the past 4 years. But I am confident that we will be able to move forward with a new partner in that office. And I'm glad that Comptroller Reynolds made the decision not to pursue that office again. I think she understood the writing on the wall and knew that it's time for someone else to do it.
Mayor, we have to conclude this sooner or later, but I'm going to ask one last question,
Yes.
and then you are to close this interview with whatever you need to.
Sure.
Is Mount Vernon in a crisis mode, emergency mode at this time?
Mount Vernon, like every city in the country, is in a crisis mode and emergency mode. We're not alone in this. But we do have some additional unique challenges in that so many issues, whether it's financial management, sewers, streets, being able to pay our police a fair and equitable wage, or the rest of our city employees a fair and equitable wage. Mount Vernon staff, we're the lowest paid in the county, whether it's police, fire, DPW, administrative staff, commissioners. We're all underpaid and overworked. Our resources have been declining, but the demands for services have been increasing. And so we definitely are focused on expanding our economic base so that we can raise the salaries of our staff, so that we can purchase the equipment that we so critically need to deliver services to taxpayers who are paying some of the highest taxes in the region, and that we can be consistent in those delivery of services. And, COVID did not help any of that. But again, I can tell you, as I speak to mayors around the country, many of them who live in urban, lead urban communities that have been under-resourced, this is not a unique problem. And so I am looking for some of the best practices that have helped to revive economies around the country and communities similar to ours. I'm working with Mayor Byron Brown of Buffalo, because he's been able to really revive their economy there. Reaching out to Keisha Lance-Bottoms, our mayor in Atlanta, because they've been able to do some great things. Mayor Garcetti out in Los Angeles, just mayors all around the country, working with the African American Mayors Association, the United States Conference of Mayors, the New York Conference of Mayors, the Women's Conference of Mayors, because mayors sit in this seat. And while people elect senators and congresspeople and council people and comptrollers, they look to their mayors every day as the chief executive officer of the city to deliver. And no one knows the stress of being a mayor like a mayor. And so I am working with my fellow mayors around the country to identify solutions for Mount Vernon. We are having conversations with our federal and our state and our county officials to bring additional resources to Mount Vernon. And the problems that Mount Vernon has had for many years are not going to be changed overnight, but we are doing everything within our power to make sure that we are at the table for those discussions so that we can access money that is going to come out of Washington in a way that we have not seen in several generations. And so what will be critically important for the city of Mount Vernon right now is to make sure that our elected officials are working together, that we are communicating with the community, and that we have our pulse, our finger on the pulse of the community and what the community needs, that we're being transparent in the way that we're operating, and that we're working together. We need our citizens to rally together and help advocate for some of these funds that are coming out of Washington. And one of the examples that we saw of that is there was an article in the Guardian newspaper, I believe, that came out last week, which is a federal publication. And some of our residents who are experiencing some of these sewer challenges reached out to the Guardian newspaper and said, we want you to come and do a story on some of the challenges that we're experiencing with sewage backing up. And the city of Mount Vernon cooperated with that story, and we let them know what we're doing with our federal and state partners and how we're working with the council to start to bring some resolution to this system here. But making sure that we get the right people in office who are coming in not just to use the position as a foot up to the next position, but to ensure that they are focused solely on serving the residents of Mount Vernon, improving the quality of life, working together to bring resources to Mount Vernon, utilizing the checks and balances that are in place. That's what we have to do. Political infighting has to stop, and Mount Vernon has to work together to secure the resources that we so much need and that we deserve. And as a majority minority community, when the president and the governor and everyone is talking about equity, Mount Vernon is uniquely positioned to receive those resources, but we have to be focused on working together to bring those resources into the community more than we're focused on taking down a political rival.
Mayor, I just have one more question.
Yes, you always do. Always just one more.
Just one more.
Just one
In the
more.
police department,
Yes.
we've seen lots of your officers leaving your police department, seeking employment in other municipalities.
Absolutely.
One of
They're
the-
not just seeking it, they're being actively recruited.
Recruit.
And so, as I said a few minutes ago, Mount Vernon are some of the lowest paid employees in the county. And we have people who have maxed out at $92,000, $95,000 in our department who are able to go up to the county and other departments and start out on a mid-level in a safer, less challenging environment and make $20,000, $30,000 more. They have contracts that they can rely on. They're not worrying about being laid off. They're not worrying about not receiving a paycheck. And you know, again, the perfect storm. The governor put out a mandate across the state, and the community nationwide has been talking about lack of diversity in police departments. And if you look at the numbers of black and brown officers in the county and in all of the municipalities throughout Westchester, they were pitifully low. And these other communities now, under mandates and calls to diversify their department, have come to the blackest and brownest department that is the best trained in the county, but unfortunately the lowest paid, and they are recruiting. And if you go and you dig down into the people who are transferring and who are being offered jobs, they are the black and brown officers, because the other departments throughout the county are trying to diversify their departments. And because there have been no civil service tests given, and maybe people didn't even apply and take tests in their communities, oftentimes because they didn't have a history of hiring black and brown officers, they now have to come to the mecca of strong, trained, well-experienced police officers that this region has to offer. And because for the last 10 or 20 years, we have not found the resources as a city government to keep financial parity and pay parity with the communities around us, it is a very easy decision for people to leave. I can't blame them. It is very painful to lose the type of officers that we have lost to the surrounding communities. But there hasn't been a contract since the end of 2017. And there's not a contract this year because we don't know the financial situation. We've had to talk about layoffs because we don't know the financial condition. I don't have the money, and I won't have the money this year or next year to start doling out $20,000 and $30,000 increases. So guess what? We are going to continue to bleed some of our best officers and some of our minority officers because other departments have more resources and they also have a mandate to diversify their departments. And the way that they're diversifying their departments and meeting mandates and receiving the results that they haven't been focused on for the past 20 years is coming to our department to take our best, our brightest, and our brownest officers.
So Mayor,
I'm not saying that other officers aren't transferring,
I understand.
but those are the officers that are being sought out by other departments. It's not as if officers haven't asked for transfers and put in applications in the past. It's just that many of those departments weren't necessarily interested in them. But right now, and it might be a very controversial thing to say, but black and brown officers from urban communities are in style and in fashion, and when you're looking for the best and the brightest and the most experienced, everyone is coming to Mount Vernon. And unfortunately, like I said, because for the last 2 decades, we have not kept pace with pay, and we have not kept pace with contracts resources, working conditions, giving them a facility that they could work in, that they can be proud of, ensuring that they had the equipment that they needed, down to the cars. Our officers are riding in cars that are 10 and 15 years old, that they have to sit on pillows so that they're not sitting on metal bars in the car. And so the morale has been low, and the opportunities are coming now in abundance for them to transfer and to ensure the security and the financial stability of their families. They are transferring in record numbers, and that is what is happening.
So Mayor, this is like catch-22?
It's a catch-22.
So
the unintended consequence of police reform is to take the most diverse department in the county of Westchester, serving the blackest and brownest community, and seeing a mass exodus of our well-trained black and brown officers.
So your salaries are not competitive. You lose your officers, then you have to rehire new officers. You have to train new officers. Once they get the training, then they move
transfer. So it's a
catch-22.
And it's been a problem in Mount Vernon. Badge training has been a problem in Mount Vernon for many years. This is not new. But we are absolutely seeing higher numbers in the past year than we've seen before. And again, it's not just because I'm in office or Commissioner Scott is the commissioner, but there is a perfect storm of activities that are happening that have set the environment for them to leave. We've lost some incredible officers. We received another resignation from one of our most incredible community outreach officers last night, and I'm sure there'll be more, and that's unfortunate. But we've inherited some real challenges, and we're going to have to find a way to work through them, and we will not have money to give people $20,000 and $30,000 extra a year. Our tax base cannot manage it. I'm not going to find $5–10 million extra a year overnight. That would require a 10–15% tax increase on residents who can't afford it right now. And so we'll continue to see some badge drain, but I am hopeful that based on the fact that we are giving the first police exam in 5 years tomorrow. We have about 570 people who will be taking that exam. There are almost 180 of them are Mount Vernonites. That we will have a new crop of people, hopefully that in December, when the next police academy is offered, that we'll be able to start hiring Mount Vernon again. And as our focus is on expanding our economic base here in Mount Vernon, bringing in developers, bringing in business who will pay their full ride of taxes so that we could increase and expand our investment in our staff and in building up the infrastructure and our human capital here in Mount Vernon, that will be able going forward to start retaining these officers and some of the best staff that Mount Vernon has.
On that note, we conclude this interview unless Mayor has one last thing to say.
No, we're focused forward. We're focused forward. We are hopeful. We know that there are challenges that we've had, and there are challenges that will still be ahead of us, but working with my staff, working with our other electeds, and working with our community, we will continue to strive to do everything possible to move Mount Vernon forward. We are not running away from the challenges. We're not running away from the questions, but we are focused on the governance of Mount Vernon and not the salaciousness or the politics that so many people are focused on. Mount Vernon is lost out on too many opportunities because we've been focused just on re-election and not focused on making sure that the community is receiving the services that they voted us in for.
Mayor, thank you very much for making yourself available.
Absolutely.
And hopefully we will talk again in the next, maybe next 2 months. I will reach out.
We'll see.
Thank you guys. Thank you for watching. Please leave your comments, but don't forget, disagreement is fine. Being rude and disrespectful is not. So say whatever you need to say, but in a polite and respectful manner. Thank you all.